March 6, 1987, 1342 hours, 16,000 feet above Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Staff Sergeant Michael Malloy stands in the open door of a C-130 Hercules, wind tearing at his jumpsuit. 23 years old, airborne qualified, 47 successful jumps in his logbook. The jumpmaster gives the signal. Malloy launches himself into empty sky. His parachute deploys exactly on time. 1,400 feet. The canopy blossoms above him, textbook perfect. No twists in the lines, no malfunctions. The rate of descent slows from terminal velocity to a gentle drift. Below him, the drop zone spreads out in spring green. His fellow paratroopers descend in, formation around him, preparing for landing. But Malloy isn't preparing for anything anymore. When recovery teams reach him 30 seconds after touchdown, his parachute is still inflated, billowing in the March wind. His landing was soft. No impact trauma, no broken bones. His equipment is functioning perfectly. But Michael Malloy is dead. Has been dead for perhaps 3 minutes. Died somewhere between 1,600 feet and the ground, suspended beneath a fully operational parachute, floating peacefully toward Earth, while his heart simply stopped. The autopsy report will use the term cardiac arrest during descent. Medical examiners will find no pre-existing heart condition, no congenital defects, no arterial blockages. 23 years old, in peak physical condition, trained to jump from aircraft, certified healthy just 6 weeks prior. His heart stopped because his body made a catastrophic miscalculation about whether he was falling or flying. The terror reflex. The human cardiovascular system evolved on solid ground. It developed complex mechanisms for managing blood pressure, oxygen distribution, and heart rhythm in a world where feet stayed connected to Earth, where danger meant running from predators or fighting rivals, where threats came from things you could see, touch, fight, or flee. It never evolved for stepping out of aircraft at 3 miles up. When Michael Malloy left that C-130, his body registered the experience as fatal. The sudden acceleration, the howling wind, the ground impossibly far below and getting closer. Every ancient survival mechanism in his nervous system screamed emergency. His sympathetic nervous system flooded his bloodstream with adrenaline and norepinephrine. His heart rate spiked from 80 beats per minute to over 200. This is normal, expected. Every paratrooper experiences it. The training at jump school specifically prepares soldiers for this surge of fear and adrenaline. They learn to function through it, to maintain control, to complete their jump procedures despite every instinct screaming at them to grab onto something, anything, to stop the fall. But sometimes the system overcorrects. Dr. Helena Friedman, a cardiologist who spent 15 years studying military aviation fatalities, documented what she termed paradoxical cardiac response to perceived terminal descent. In rare cases, when the sympathetic nervous system triggers maximum emergency response, the vagus nerve, which controls heart rhythm, attempts to override the panic. It tries to slow everything down, to prevent the heart from beating itself to death. Normally, these systems balance each other. The sympathetic nervous system accelerates, the parasympathetic system moderates. Heart rate increases but remains survivable. Blood pressure spikes but stays within safe parameters, except when they don't balance. When the vagus nerve fires too hard, trying to stop runaway tachycardia. When it slows the heart too much. When the electrical signals controlling cardiac rhythm become confused, contradictory, chaotic. The medical term is vagal override. The heart's natural pacemaker, the sinoatrial node, receives contradictory signals. Speed up, slow down, speed up, slow down. The rhythm becomes erratic. Ventricles begin contracting out of sync with atria. Blood stops moving efficiently through the chambers. Then the heart just stops. Not from physical damage, not from oxygen deprivation, not from any structural failure. It stops because the body's control systems issued impossible instructions, and the heart couldn't resolve them. So it stopped trying. The silence between sky and earth. 1,400 feet. That's where Malloy's parachute deployed. Standard altitude for static line jumps. High enough to allow for reserve deployment if the main chute fails. Low enough that soldiers don't spend excessive time exposed to ground fire in combat situations. It takes approximately 90 seconds to descend from 1,400 feet under a fully deployed canopy. 90 seconds of floating, of relative calm after the violence of exit and the snap of canopy inflation. Most paratroopers describe these 90 seconds as almost peaceful. The terror of stepping into nothing has passed. The canopy overhead provides reassurance. The ground approaches at a manageable rate. Training kicks in. Prepare for landing. Feet and knees together. Knees slightly bent. Ready to absorb impact through a proper parachute landing fall. For Malloy, those 90 seconds became the interval between life and death. Somewhere during that descent, witnesses couldn't pinpoint exactly when his control lines went slack. His body position shifted from alert readiness to complete limpness. The parachute continued functioning perfectly, but the human beneath it was no longer conscious, no longer breathing, no longer alive. Other jumpers noticed nothing wrong. Malloy's parachute looked normal. His descent rate was standard. Nothing about his fall drew attention until after landing, when his canopy remained inflated and he didn't move to collapse it. Standard procedure after touchdown is immediate canopy collapse, releasing air from the parachute to prevent being dragged by wind. When Malloy's chute kept billowing, catching the breeze, pulling his motionless body across the drop zone, other paratroopers ran to assist. They found him face down in the grass, parachute harness still properly secured, equipment still correctly positioned. No blood, no obvious injury, just absolute stillness. Medics arrived within minutes. CPR began immediately. Defibrillator applied. Advanced cardiac life support protocols followed exactly. Nothing worked. The heart that had stopped at altitude refused to restart at ground level. The mathematics of probability. Fatal cardiac events during parachute descent are extraordinarily rare. Between 1980 and 2000, the United States military conducted approximately 23 million parachute jumps. Total fatalities from equipment malfunction, mid-air collision, improper landing, and all other causes combined, 347 deaths. Fatalities specifically attributable to cardiac arrest during descent with functioning parachute, 11 confirmed cases, 11 out of 23 million. A probability of 0.00004%. Military investigators examined every variable in Malloy's case. His medical history was pristine. No family history of sudden cardiac death, no history of arrhythmia, no drug use, no alcohol problems. Physical fitness evaluations consistently excellent. Psychological assessments normal. His jump the day he died was his 48th. He was experienced but not overconfident. Weather conditions were ideal. Equipment inspection showed no irregularities. The only risk factor investigators could identify, he was human. And human nervous systems weren't designed for voluntary falling. Dr. Friedman's research identified patterns in the 11 confirmed cases. All victims were male, average age 24, all in excellent physical condition. Most had between 30 and 70 previous jumps, experienced enough to have overcome initial fear, but not so experienced that the jump was completely routine. None had diagnosed cardiac conditions. The common factor was stress response, not fear exactly. These were trained paratroopers, not panicking civilians, but autonomic nervous system activation, the involuntary cascade of chemical and electrical signals that governs heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, and countless other functions operating below conscious control. In normal circumstances, these systems are reliable. In the extraordinary circumstance of human flight without aircraft, these systems sometimes miscalculate fatally. The aftermath. The Army grounded all parachute training operations at Fort Bragg for 72 hours after Malloy's death. Standard procedure following training fatalities. Investigation teams reviewed equipment, procedures, training protocols. Medical personnel examined every jumper who had been in the air with Malloy that day. Commanders wanted to know if this was preventable, if screening could identify soldiers at risk, if procedures could be modified to reduce the already microscopic probability even further. The conclusion was uncomfortable. Probably not. You cannot screen for vagal override potential without subjecting every soldier to the exact stress that triggers it, jumping from aircraft. And even then, a soldier who completes 100 jumps without incident might experience fatal cardiac arrest on jump 101. The human nervous system doesn't issue warnings before catastrophic miscalculation. New protocols emerged anyway. Enhanced cardiac screening before jump school, mandatory immediate medical evaluation for any jumper reporting heart palpitations, dizziness, or unusual chest sensations during descent. Better training for jumpmaster recognition of jumpers in medical distress during flight. But the fundamental risk remained. Stepping from aircraft creates physiological stress that human bodies aren't evolved to handle. Most handle it successfully. Some don't. The difference isn't always predictable. Michael Malloy's family received his posthumous promotion to Sergeant First Class. His name was added to memorial plaques at Fort Bragg. His fellow paratroopers continued jumping, because the mission requires it, because airborne operations remain essential to military capability, because 370 fatalities per 23 million jumps is actually remarkably safe compared to many military training activities. But every jumpmaster at every airborne school now knows that parachute malfunction isn't the only way to die during a jump. That perfect equipment and perfect technique and perfect weather don't guarantee survival. That the human body itself can become the malfunction. The strange physics of falling. Malloy died doing what humans spent millennia dreaming about: flying, defying gravity, traveling through 3 dimensions of space with only fabric and rope preventing terminal impact. Every culture's mythology includes stories of flight. Icarus, Wayland the Smith, the Chinese legend of the flying car, indigenous American Thunderbird stories. Humanity gazed at birds with envy and wondered what it would feel like to leave the Earth. Now we know. For most people, it feels terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The moment before exit is pure fear. The moment after parachute deployment is pure relief. The descent is something else entirely, a strange interlude where you're suspended between earth and sky, falling and flying simultaneously, trusting technology and training to deliver you safely to ground. For 11 soldiers out of 23 million jumps, that interlude became something else. A physiological paradox where the body's attempt to save itself became the thing that killed it. Where survival instinct became fatal error. Where ancient nervous systems, confronted with modern circumstances they weren't designed to interpret, made the worst possible calculation. Michael Malloy's parachute opened perfectly. His training was flawless. His equipment functioned exactly as designed. Every external factor worked in his favor. But inside his chest, electrical signals went haywire. His heart stopped, not because it was damaged, but because it was confused. The organ that had kept him alive for 23 years couldn't reconcile the contradictory information it was receiving from his nervous system. So it stopped trying. The medical examiner's final report listed cause of death as cardiac arrhythmia induced by stress response during parachute descent. In plainer language, his body killed him trying to save him from a danger that didn't exist. The fall wouldn't have killed him. The parachute was functioning perfectly. He would have landed safely. His heart just didn't know that.